Ken, will you introduce this? I don't know her last name. Manuela Osoino is the new Osorno. Welcome to her. So, I'm taking on a small subject today. Why am I here? A question maybe a couple people in the history of time have asked themselves. Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? I've been praying on this in a very concentrated way for about 2.5 years. And one of the answers that I get, that I've heard a lot from people and that I really like is, I'm here to give and receive love. I'm here to give and receive love. That's a really good answer. That covers pretty much everything. But why me? Why do I need to? What am I here? What kind of love am I here to give and receive? Why me in particular? Why my personality, my ego, my individuality? Why am I here? And I believe that it's not to get rid of my individuality or my personality or even my ego. Otherwise, why would God have given that to me? But it is to learn how to use those things, my personality, my individuality, to use them in service of spirit, which means in service of love, as far as I can tell. So divine purpose is what I'm talking about today, and we all have one. As a matter of fact, I think we all have many divine purposes. And I've really been engaged in trying to find out what mine is. And there's an overarching purpose, I believe, for all of us, that connecting our whole lives, our lives together as a whole, this sort of overlying arc that encompasses everything we do, that's our purpose. But I also believe we have our daily purpose, letting the day unfold, being present to it, being kind to ourselves and others, and using our daily purpose, our daily doing of God's will to contribute to our overarching purpose in life, whatever that is. And that life purpose is connected to dreams. We talk a lot in Unity about dreaming, about allowing ourselves to dream. And I'm talking about me today, obviously, but I'm also talking about you. I think most of us want to know what our purpose is. You know, what is my purpose? And if you are young and you don't know what that is yet and you're exploring, then this is a good talk for you. Or if you are like me in the middle of life and trying to redefine and rediscover what my purpose is now versus what it was 20 years ago. Or even if you're at retirement age, and so much of your purpose for the last maybe 40 or 50 years has been being at work 8 hours a day and doing the best you can there, to be in a place where, how do I fill my time with purpose? What is my purpose now? So hopefully it can be helpful to people in all stages of life. I want to do God's will. I pray that every day. I want to do your will. Help me to do your will. Now, has that ever made you nervous to say that? Because, you know, in society, a lot of times when people say God's will, it's always connected to some horrible catastrophe that's just happened. Oh, your house burned down. Well, that was God's will. You know, or, you know, your best friend dies too young. Must have been God's will. A hurricane wipes out a whole city. God's will again. And what I like to remember and what I want to propose to you to remember on a daily basis is the sun came up this morning because that was God's will. You went to bed last night and you did not probably tell yourself to keep breathing all night long. You did not stay awake and remind yourself to keep breathing, and yet you woke up this morning having received all the breath that you needed to continue to sustain your very complex body and life. And that is God's will. You did it. You did God's will last night. Here you are. And this phrase was introduced to me by a friend with whom I'm in a spiritual study group a few months ago, and it kind of made me uncomfortable at first, but then I've just been really working with it. She said, God's will is your heart's desire. And your heart's desire is God's will. Why don't you say that with me? Just say that with an I am statement. God's will is my heart's desire. Say that. God's will is my heart's desire. And then say the opposite. My heart's desire is God's will. My heart's desire is God's will. I really have come to believe this, that there is a longing within you. There is something within you that was put there by the divine. And when you find what that is and you follow it to the best of your ability, it will give your life meaning in every moment. It will allow you to use your gifts, not just the obvious ones, but all of your gifts, and sometimes in very unexpected ways. It will help you find gifts you didn't know you had. And it will always, I believe, serve others, while also being the very best thing you could do for yourself. It is always, and it's always about what I am here to do, not about what someone else is going to let me do. Does that make sense? So if my heart's desire is I want to be famous, I don't have control over that, right? The media has control over that, the whatever, there's lots of things outside myself that have control over that. But if I say I have a gift and I want to use it and I will use it in service, then if you're meant to become famous, you will. But famous is not a heart's desire. The actual using of the gift, the process, I believe, is the heart's desire. So our task is to find out what is our heart's desire. And I think most of us don't know. I know I certainly did not. And part of that is I was raised in a family and in such a way where I just really got the message early on, don't want anything because you're not going to get it anyway. And I think that I'm not alone in that. And so I have always just sort of, whatever shows up, gone, okay, I'll do that, and I'll make the best of it. And I think that actually has served me fairly well, because I've always known that I needed to use my gifts in whatever I was doing. But when I really sat down and said, what is my heart's desire? Okay, what I've been doing the last few years isn't working for me anymore. So what is my heart's desire? And what has to happen is that you have to get quiet. What I've learned, I have to get quiet. Those of you who know me know that quiet is not my best thing. Talking is my best thing, probably. Quiet is not my best thing, but I have to do that, and I have to do it over and over again. I can't get quiet just once. And I have to continually ask the question, reveal to me my heart's desire. Reveal to me my heart's desire. And if I then shut up and listen to the answer, it is revealed to me. I also believe our heart's desire changes over the course of our lifetime. And that doesn't mean it's a betrayal of your younger self. I had this dream when I was 20 and I'm not living it now, so I've betrayed myself. No, we grow, we change. You're not your younger self anymore. You've discovered more about your gifts, and you've discovered more about what brings you joy. So when I earnestly seek, when I get up in the morning and I surrender to God's will and trust that I can be in my joy and that I will use my gifts and that my intention is to serve with my gifts, then I am doing God's will. We are, at our core, the very substance of God. I believe this with everything in me. So if we take the time and effort to reach and understand our core, then how could it be otherwise than that what's deepest within you is God's will for you? Your heart's desire is God's will. Your heart's desire is your higher purpose. And some of the things that stand in our way are these external expectations, the things we get when we're children, when our parents say, you shouldn't do that, you can't do that. The messages we get from society, only rich people do that, only white people do that, only skinny people do that, only whatever. We get these messages and we take them in. In my case, I know that I got a lot of abuse from the religion that I grew up in, which, had a lot of don'ts and not very many do's. And then there are also the internal ways that we stand in front of our heart's desire. that we develop ourselves, which are our excuses, which sometimes stem from our accidents and our responsibilities, real or imagined. Well, I have a child, so I can't. I have a husband, so I can't do that. I'm too old to do that. I'm not educated enough to do that. Well, what I want to do has never really been done before, so I don't have any path to follow, so I don't really know how to do it. Those are all excuses that we can use, and they are detour signs sometimes that we follow. And here's the really, really coolest thing, I think, that I've come to believe as I've been really meditating on this for the last few months, that those detours are not necessarily leading us off the path. Sometimes they are the path, or they can be the path if we let them be. If we choose to let all of our experiences serve us, to serve our heart's desire. I don't know, how many of you have ever read the book, A Prayer for Owen Meany? Anybody? It's a John Irving book. It's a great book, and I won't go into it, but there's a scene that happens all through the book. It's a very long book where these two friends are practicing this basketball move, and neither of them knows, it's like they're obsessed with getting it just right, and every time they're around a court, and sometimes even when they're not, they practice the move without even having a ball or a net, and they practice this move over and over again, and toward the end of the book, there comes a time when they're able to save a bunch of people by getting a bomb out of a high window that no one can reach. And because they've practiced this move of lifting each other and throwing, they do that. And I think sometimes life is very much like that. That's a very dramatic illustration of that. But I believe that sometimes God is handing us pieces to a jigsaw puzzle, on a daily basis, as we go through our lives, as we go through our work, as we go through our families, and we're like, okay, what is that? That didn't look like anything to me. There's no pattern. It's just a bunch of colors. Is your dog calling you? It's all right. So sometimes we're being handed pieces to a jigsaw puzzle, and it can take a really long time. Open a box of a jigsaw puzzle and take out a piece at a time, and without looking at the box, and see how long it takes you to know what it's even a picture of. This is what I see our lives sometimes as. God's handing us pieces to a jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes we have to have a lot of them, and then suddenly they'll fall into place, and we'll see the picture. Oh, that's what that was. I didn't know why I had this little green piece over here. I never really wanted a green piece. I never thought of a green piece. Green was never what I was looking for, but I see how it fits. And now it makes a tree, or it makes the eyes of someone I love, or whatever. So I'm going to share with you just a little short example of my jigsaw puzzle. I was a singer. That's the one thing I knew my whole life. Before I talked, it was and still is, the most joyful thing I do. It fulfills me like nothing else. I would do it if I were on a desert island. I don't do it for you. I like to do it for you, and I'm glad that you enjoy it, but I don't do it for you. I do it because it is my most joyful thing to do. And I always knew that. And when I went to college, I had a full scholarship in music, and I was a performance major. And lots of people said, well, you should really be an education major so you have something to fall back on. And I said, I don't need anything to fall back on. I am a singer. And part of the way that I made my living in college was to become a church musician. And I did not purposely go to Unity. I was a church musician at an Episcopal church for a very long time. And I had to learn when to kneel and when to stand and when to sit, when to kneel and when to stand. And then I suddenly got offered this job to sub for someone at a Unity church, and I was like, okay, I can do that. And then it turned into a job that lasted 24 years. That was not my intention. That was not my dream. That is not anything I ever thought of. And then I became a mom. And when I became a mom, I needed to learn. I needed to use some more gifts other than my singing gifts. As a matter of fact, when my daughter was a child and I would sing to her, she would stop her ears and yell, "Ah!" I have a theory about that. I think it's because she knew I wasn't doing it for her, that I was doing it for me. She was like, it's about me here. So I had to become a nurturer, and that is one of my gifts. I had to become a janitor. I had to become a teacher, and I had to become a person who could consider the needs of my child as greater than my own, at least during the time that she was young. Later, I became a spouse. I'm skipping my first spouse because we don't need to talk about that. I became a spouse, and because my spouse asked me, and it seemed to be the best thing for our family, I joined his business, which was an environmental business, which is not something I ever wanted to do, believe me. And it seemed to me that I was heading pretty far off the path, but what I was doing was considering the needs of my family above the needs of me as an individual. And what I learned was how to be a boss, because he won't fire anybody, he makes me do it. And I had to learn to do that with kindness. I had to learn how to be a leader, not just a boss, but a true leader, which means a motivator, an encourager, a mediator, a trainer, a teacher. I had to learn how to consider the needs of all the people in the company above just my own. And sometime during that, shortly after that, I became not just the singer at a church, but a choir director at a church. And the skills that I needed there were motivator, nurturer, cheerleader, teacher, leader, by example. Mediator, and I had to learn how to trust my instincts. And being a choir director called from me because I knew that as singing was a spiritual experience for me, that I had to make that a spiritual experience for the people that I was leading. And so that brought me into pastoral care. It brought me into prayer. My choir became a prayer group. We supported each other. We visited each other in the hospital. And the rest of the church used to, if they had something going on, they'd say, "Can we please get on the choir list? Because y'all are really good prayers." And I had to consider the needs of an even larger group above my own. And my responsibilities to the choir were beautiful and lovely, but at the same time, I understood that our responsibility was to the larger congregation, that we were there, we were having a good time with each other and doing all kinds of spiritual work, but we were there to serve the larger group. The business was growing. I had to go to trade shows and conferences. Now, as much as I like to talk, I really like to talk to people I already know. It is very hard, and I've learned how to fake it, but I am actually very shy, and it's very difficult for me to speak to people I don't know. It takes me a long time. And now I'm standing in a booth at a trade show 8 hours a day talking to everybody that comes by, trying to get them in our booth. This was not something that I enjoyed doing. And I was attending all these conferences, and I don't know exactly how this happened, but I ended up being a speaker. I think the way it happened is Bob went up to the people leading the conferences and said, "My wife's a really great speaker, you should have her speak." And so I had to learn how to do that. And I started speaking at these conferences on the business that I had become educated in of necessity and not because I wanted to. And then I became the national education director for our company as it became very large. I had to learn how to use PowerPoint. I had to speak in public to all kinds of audiences, large and small, sometimes thousands of people, sometimes 20 people. And I had to speak in front of audiences that were male, when I was a female in a male-dominated industry, and I had to speak in front of audiences that were older than me, who were going, "What is this young whippersnapper doing?" And I had to develop confidence in what I knew, regardless of how it might be received. And then in the church, I became a music director. So now I'm supervising and considering the needs of about 100 people at one time I had in my music department. And a lot of them were male, and a lot of them were older than me, and I had to really develop the confidence that I knew what I was talking about, and I could speak from that place of knowing. Not too long after that, I was asked to be on the music ministry team for Unity Worldwide Ministries, which means that now I'm putting on conferences. I would never have had a reason to go to a conference or know what one looked like if I hadn't been going to the National Air Duct Cleaners Association and the Restoration Industry Association conferences and speaking at them and being on committees and helping to organize them. So here I am. They asked me, can I be on this team? We're doing conferences. Can you be on this committee? Like, oh, okay, I can do that. And I get to do it about music. Isn't that cool? So I knew how to do that. And what did that draw from me? Well, the teaching, the leading, all of those things that I had developed. I had to use PowerPoint. I had to use my public speaking. I had to use my motivating and my supporting. I became a mentor, a counselor, again, a mediator, and was considering the needs of hundreds of people that come to our conferences and that don't come to the conferences, but that draw upon the team for resources every day of the year, that call us, that email us, that depend on us to provide resources. And then there came a time when I had to leave my music directorship at the church I loved because there were things that were happening that were not in alignment with my beliefs. And I felt that I would be out of integrity by staying, even though I loved my job. But I had the confidence to do that, to stay in my integrity. And that was the hardest thing I ever did. It truly was. But I did stay in my integrity. And then I was offered a new director job. And at this one, I just kind of went, could I speak sometime? Always wanted to do that. Never was going to do it at the other place. And through doing that, I realized I really have something to share. And, I had already been doing the pastoral care. I'd already been doing the prayer. And now I got to speak to people and realize that I had something to say that meant something to them. And that really helped me identify my heart's desire, which was ministry, which I'd been doing for years, but a different kind of ministry. A leader, by example, a teacher, a nurturer, a visionary, a speaker, a prayer, a mediator, a hirer and firer, a motivator, a mentor, a counselor, a janitor. So today, following my heart's desire, I'm releasing a job that doesn't feel like mine, rather than trying to fit into it. And I'm trusting that what is mine will come to me. And what I've learned is I don't have to fit your idea of what I should be. I get to decide what I want to be. And it's the scariest thing of all. It's the scariest thing of all, because I got really good as the child of an alcoholic, I got really good at figuring out what people wanted from me and then giving it to them. And so this is huge for me to say, thank you, but that's not exactly what I see for myself. And to stand up and say, I'm assuming that if I'm following my heart's desire and I'm asking to do God's will on a daily basis, then God will provide for me whatever it is that I need. I don't even know what that looks like yet. But I think I'll know when it gets here because I will be using my gifts. I will be serving others and myself. There always is a win-win. If you're ever doing anything where somebody has to lose in order for you to win, then that is not God's will, I believe. There always is a win-win. And there's a certain comfort and ease, I believe. Not that we don't have to work hard, and I'm always willing to work hard, but sometimes we bang our heads on a closed door for a really long time. When what we need to do is take a step back and see that there are open doors all around us, and that maybe that closed door is closed because it's not our door. It's somebody else's door. And that became my prayer in the last 6 months. A prayer partner of mine and I were talking about this because he was in a situation where he's looking at moving into a bigger job and wanting to be allowed that opportunity. And my prayer with him was, if it's my job, I want it. If it's not my job, I don't want it. What a beautiful prayer. Because if it's my job, God will give it to me. And if it's not my job, I don't want to struggle to try to take it. So, if you want to follow your heart's desire, first you got to get still and know what you want. But you don't have to give in to other expectations or take the easy road. You have to have the courage to step forward, but you don't have to stare at a closed door or beat your head against it. And you don't have to make your decisions based upon what seems the least scary. That's a hard one. And do know that you're going to get to use everything you've learned. So there is no point in blaming yourself for wasted time. Oh, all those times I spent at that environmental company when I could have been what? I don't know. I see how that every single thing I've done has been contributing to my heart's desire. It's either doing God's will or it's preparing me to take the next step in doing God's will. And I believe, and the reason I know I'm talking about me here, but it's because you are exactly the same. Everything you have ever done, if you choose to use it in that way, prepares you for your next thing to do. So ask for help. I say do ask for help. It's always good to reach out and say, here's what I want. I'm not sure how to do it. But don't follow external directives. Listen and trust yourself. Listen to those whom you honestly know have your best interests at heart. But don't waste your time gathering opinions from everybody and trying to figure out, okay, well, 70% say I should do this, and, that doesn't work very well. And don't listen to your naysayers. I do think it is important sometimes to listen to the world. If you say, I think this is my gift, and you do it over and over and over again, and the world closes a door in your face every time, I'm here to suggest possibly that's not your gift. Get back in the silence and listen again. Because you have gifts, and they're wonderful, and if you waste your time coveting someone else's gift instead of cultivating your own, you will have lost something. So all of this is contingent upon staying in touch with the God within. God, I want to do your will. Teach me. Teach me how to do your will. Show me the way. Help me to know. And then shut up and listen. So keeping checking in with God and self, and not constantly second-guessing ourselves. So I say take courage. You won't always see the whole picture, Ken. Be sure enough that the next step is the right one to take. Just the next step. You don't have to see the whole picture. Know that the next step is the right one. And more will be revealed as time goes on. And I'm going to sing a song that I just finished writing along with my friends Sue Riley and Sloan Wainwright that seems to just really work for this. It's called Learn How to Fly, and Ken has graciously learned it in the last 2 days. Standing at the edge of the life I know, afraid to step forward, can't see what's below. But I've come so far to the top of this hill. I don't want to go backward, and I refuse to stand still. But faith is knowing I've got to keep going when life isn't flowing, and I don't know why. I want to keep growing, can't just sit here and cry. Taking the leap, I'm gonna learn how to fly. I thought life was a lesson, like being in school. I figured I'd be safe if I just played by the rules. But in the blink of an eye, the whole world can change. Till nothing's familiar, no sure thing remains. But faith is knowing I'm gonna keep going